Okay, so I saw this video yesterday of Shannon Sharpe, who had Amanda Seales on his Club Shay Shay podcast recently, and this clip went pretty viral. In it, Amanda shares her experience at school during the 90s, talking about her encounters with racism with one particular teacher. Anyways, I'm going to play you the clip here and just watch Amanda Seales' reaction to Shannon checking her on her experience. Things got extremely awkward, judging by Seales' reaction.
You know what the parent-teacher conferences were about?
What?
Amanda is sticking up for other kids in the class. Amanda is correcting me. Like I had a teacher, Miss Schwenk, who called a conference because she was talking about Aboriginal art. Mm-hmm. And she said that she stood in front of the class and said, you know, that the Aborigines are a Stone Age people. And I was like, ma'am, there are Aboriginals alive right now. Like they are a part of civilization. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, no, you know, what I mean is that they've never advanced. And we're in a classroom in Orlando, Florida. So like, if we don't check this type of stuff, it's going to just continue. So I was that student. Like I was the kid who was always raising my hand and just wasn't easily appeased by simply just someone being an authority.
Right.
And I love this because when she called my mom and said, you know, I'd like to set a conference up because I have some complaints about Amanda. My mom said, well, you know, that's interesting because Amanda has some complaints about you. And so they came to the meeting. And it was my mom and Mr. Wright and Miss Cersei. It's all black people at Dr. Phillips High School in Orlando, Florida. And this lady sat there and actually you and Mr. Wright had the same build. And Mr. Wright was like, all right, so, you know, we're here to discuss Amanda disrupting the class with her talking. And she was like, no, Amanda doesn't disrupt the class with her talking. She actually helps the other students out. He's like, oh, okay. So is it about her grades? And she's like, actually, no. One of her art pieces is featured in our exhibit at the library. And he's like, so what are we here for? And she's like, well, you know, she corrects me in front of the class. And these three black people are like, here we go with this racist bullshit, you know, because that's really what it is. We're in Florida in the 80s and the 90s. And
but let me ask you this.
Okay.
Do you think she would have felt equally as offended if a white kid, because I'm assuming this teacher was white, right? Mm-hmm. If a white child would have corrected her, I think most teachers would feel some type of way if a child corrects them.
That's not for me to surmise. I'm just saying that my experience was this lady giving wrong information.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to correct her. Now, this is the same lady who tried to accuse me of stealing. And when a white girl said, no, Amanda didn't steal it, I did. She was like, well, I think both of you need to go to the principal.
Right.
I'm in Orlando, Florida, which is a notoriously racist state, Florida, in the 90s. And I'm talking to you about a white woman who is speaking about black people, indigenous people in a country where those same indigenous people have had all of their land taken from them by former criminals that were sent there from England. And she is calling them Stone Age people. And I, as a black girl, the only black girl in her class, am correcting her.
But my thing is, you're right. She possibly misspoke or she didn't know.
I guess my question to you is, why do you even feel compelled at this juncture in this interview? Why would you even feel compelled to try to?
Because because I'm not defending. But my thing is that what I'm trying to say, most adults, when kids correct them or speak, feel some type of way. This is not unique to a black, white, or white, black. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you took it that way. But I remember when I was growing up, my grandparents and parents said, hey, kids, stay in your place. Adults are speaking. That's all. Maybe that didn't happen where you were from in Orlando, Florida. But where I grew up when I grew up, kids did not correct adults. So I apologize if you thought it came off as combative.
No problem.
Okay, so Amanda Seales is known to be a pretty vocal and outspoken individual, and Shannon kind of checks her on her story that maybe, and I say maybe, that it had nothing to do with race. So with that came all the backlash towards Shannon, with one person tweeting, Seales is being interviewed, why is Shannon trying to explain her point of view? That is for the audience to interpret. If he's going to interject his opinions, then it's a conversation between them and not an interview. And then someone else wrote, Shannon isn't the guy for this conversation. Amanda realized this at the end of this. He's cool, but he's not for us. Now, my thoughts on this might not be the most popular opinion. I have no problems with a student checking his or her teacher in class, especially if what she's saying is not factual. But I didn't have a problem with Unc challenging Amanda, saying that her experience may not be unique or race-based. It's true that teachers would feel a certain way about getting challenged by a student, but to immediately label that as race-driven is just dangerous. It's one thing if there's a repeated pattern, which Amanda tried to imply with another story, but in any event, I don't have an issue with Shannon challenging her. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this story. Was Unc wrong for questioning Amanda on her story or not?